Hello everyone, I want to welcome you to Module 3 of the Energy Forecast Model online training course. The objective of this module is to provide you with some case study examples on how you can utilize the Energy Forecast model data and the visualization tool as part of a decision management process. So we're first going to look at some examples of data So now we're first going to look at the output from the energy impact analysis that's in there, and this is within the forest cores category, and this is displaying the wind energy development risk to forest cores. So we're looking at forest cores because in this example our concern is going to be potential impacts to cerulean warbler. So we want to look and identify all the forest cores that may be at risk to wind energy development. Next, we want to overlay that with the Appalachian Mountain Joint Venture Cerulean Warbler priority areas. You can see those areas with these green diagonal lines. And there is some overlap, so you can see that you would be able to identify the highest risk areas that are forested that also are important for cerulean warbler. This is a very simple example, but it kind of gives you an idea of data layers that are already existing in the energy forecast model visualization tool that you can use. Next thing is just a quick example of another very similar analysis that was done, and this is for the Audubon important forest areas. So Audubon identified these forests as important priority areas, and then they extracted the energy risk to forest cores to give you these areas here, so you can see the energy risk in only these important forest cores as identified by Audubon. These are the two examples I've covered so far with the cerulean warbler in the Audubon important forest areas. These are examples of analysis that was pre-done for you within the system. However, with the ability to download the data and use it in your own GIS software, there are some more things you can do, and I'm going to provide you two examples of that. This map here is depicting the gas risk by watershed. And so you can see these darker red areas have the highest risk, and then the light pink areas have some risk. So we know these areas do have some risk. However, we want to know which ones of the high risk area could potentially, if developed, could potentially have impacts on cold water streams. Our next step then is to add the cold water streams layer, and that's all these blue lines you see here. So now what we want to know are these at-risk areas that contain cold water streams. In this example, we're not going to be concerned with the other areas. And now this is the data layer that is only showing you those watersheds which contain a cold water stream that also have some risk of gas energy development. So our final example is going to be another example of how to incorporate data that was downloaded from the energy forecast model with additional data resources. So the example you see here is the probability of wind energy development. So these areas that you see in the dark red are areas that have a 90% greater risk of wind development. For this example, we want to look at wind development because we also want to see that are these any areas at high risk for wind development, which are also could have potential increased impacts on bad occurrences. So our first step, as you see here, is just to look at the areas with a high risk of wind development. Next step is to overlay that with the HUC 12 watersheds that do have a documented bad occurrence, and so this is for protected species. So you can see these areas in purple are the HUC 12 watersheds that met that criteria. So we don't want to look at just high-risk areas within those watersheds. We want to look at areas that are high risk that are potentially within thresholds that have been recommended. And one of those recommendations is a 5-mile buffer for wind turbines and that type of development. So my next step in this example was to identify all of those areas with a 90% risk of wind energy development that are within 5 miles of one of the watersheds which do contain listed bat species. And when you do that, this is the layer that you end up with, and you can see these areas in red here. These are the areas that met all that criteria, so these are greater than 90% risk of wind energy development and are also within 5 miles of a watershed that has a listed bat occurrence. So you can see within Pennsylvania there are a lot of areas that can be further excluded, so then you can concentrate on these high risk areas which have your species of interest. So this is just one example that you can use to incorporate data layers to answer a question. And so this was just a couple different data layers, and to prioritize this further you could incorporate additional data layers and you could really refine that. You could have different priority levels versus just high priority and not a priority. You could have high, medium, low, whatever type of classification that you wanted to use. So we've given you a couple different examples of way data from the energy forecast model can be used in conjunction with other data layers to help answer questions related to conservation management and to help identify potential areas for prioritization. The next step will be to go to Module 4 of the course and walk through these examples on your own, so there will be some hands-on exercises that you'll get ready to do.